Yorkshire Museum, England, March 2001. The curator lifts the object from tissue paper with both hands, not because it's fragile, because some things demand ceremony. A tin cup, dented at the rim, tarnished where countless thumbs gripped it, and they're scratched into the metal with something sharp. A nail, perhaps, or a knife point, 4 characters that refuse to fade. DW 1940. The woman who donated it stands by the window, 75 years old. Thin in the way Yorkshire women become thin, not from vanity, but from a lifetime of work that burns more than it feeds. Her hands shake slightly as she sets down a manila envelope, inside a black and white photograph. A girl, no, not a girl, a skeleton wearing skin. The curator studies the photo. The girl's collarbone juts like a coat hanger. Her eyes are enormous in a face that seems made of wax paper, stretched over bone. Her hands, visible at the bottom of the frame, look like bird feet. How much did she weigh? The curator asks. 62 pounds, the woman says. Her accent is strange, Yorkshire, but underneath it's something else. German, maybe, softened by decades, but never quite erased. 28 kilograms when the lorry stopped. She touches the photograph with one finger. The gesture is tender, like touching a grave. This cup kept her alive, she continues. Not the tea in it, the fact that someone bothered to wash it. That someone looked at a starving German and thought this child needs a clean cup. The curator waits. I was that girl, the woman says, and this is what happened. If you think you know how enemies should be treated in war, this story will dismantle everything you believe, and, if you haven't already, subscribe, because what comes next will redefine what strength actually means. September 1945, East Yorkshire, late afternoon, the sky the colour of wet slate. Rain threatens, but hasn't committed yet. The kind of weather Yorkshire does better than anywhere else. Not dramatic, just relentless, the sort that works its way into your bones and settles there like an old argument you've stopped trying to win. The lorry comes down the track between hedgerows, thick with blackberry bramble. Engine grinding, gears complaining. It's a military vehicle marked with the stenciled letters that mean British Army prisoner transport handle with regulation efficiency. The exhaust coughs, black smoke that hangs in the damp air like a stain. Inside the canvas-covered bed, 50 women sit on wooden benches. Wehrmacht auxiliaries, nurses, signals operators, the ones who didn't pull triggers but kept the machinery of war running anyway. The ones who typed the orders, bandaged the wounded, decoded the messages that sent other women's sons to die in ditches across France. They've been told nothing, only that they're being moved. Again. This is the 6th camp in 4 months. They've learned not to ask questions. Questions get you nothing except the attention of people who've stopped seeing you as human. The lorry lurches to a stop. Through the gap in the canvas, they see fields, endless fields, wheat stubble like gold wire bristling from dark earth, a farmhouse in the distance, low and weathered, smoke threading from the chimney. Out, the driver says, not cruel, not kind, just a man doing a job. They climb down, boots caked in clay, from 5 different camps, faces hollowed by uncertainty that's gone on so long, it's become a kind of certainty, the certainty that nothing will ever be certain again. Look at her, 19th in line as they step down from the lorry. 19 years old, 62 pounds, her name is Liesl Hartmann. Let me tell you what 62 pounds looks like on a frame built to carry 120. It looks like a coat hanger wearing clothes. It looks like famine rendered in 3 dimensions. Her Wehrmacht auxiliary uniform hangs on her like a tent on poles. The collar gap so wide you can see the knobs of her spine through the back of her shirt. Her wrists are broomsticks. Her fingers are twigs. Her face is the worst part. Cheekbones like blades, eyes enormous and fever-bright in sockets gone hollow, lips cracked and colourless, hair that was once blonde and thick now hangs in lank strings the colour of old straw. But the eyes, God, the eyes. They are the eyes of someone who has seen things no 19-year-old should see, who has held dying men while they called for mothers who would never know where their sons stopped breathing, who has learned that the human body, when pushed far enough, becomes something else entirely. She stands in the drizzle and watches the farmhouse smoke rise and thinks about nothing. Thinking requires calories. She hasn't had enough calories for real thinking in 8 months. The man waiting by the gate is named Edmund Whitfield, 54 years old. Weathered in the way Yorkshire farmers get weathered skin, like old leather hands like tree roots, eyes that have spent a lifetime reading weather and livestock. He wears a flat cap pulled low, a wool jacket that's been patched more times than replaced. He's a widower. Cancer took his wife Eleanor in 1943. He's also a father. Was a father. His son David died June 8, 1944. Normandy, 2 days after D-Day, 20 years old. Stepped on a mine that turned him into pieces the army sent home in a box they told Edmund not to open. Edmund opened it anyway. Some things a man needs to see with his own eyes to believe. He looks at the 50 women and feels nothing. Not hatred, not pity. Just the flat, grey nothing of a man who has used up his supply of feeling and is running on fumes and duty. The officer in charge, Lance Corporal Fletcher, approaches with paperwork. 50 PO dues, sir. Wehrmacht, auxiliary personnel. Your allocation as agreed. Edmund nods. Fletcher continues. Billeted in the barn and cottage, 8 hours daily, Sundays off unless harvest demands. Rations per Geneva Convention. No fraternization beyond work requirements. Understood. Aye, Edmund says. Fletcher drives away. The sound of engines fades until there's only rain and breathing and the distant lowing of cattle. Edmund looks at the women. They look at him, waiting for shouting, for rifles, for the cruelty they've been taught to expect. He clears his throat. You'll be billeted in the barn and cottage, he says. Yorkshire accent, thick as porridge. Roofs sound, stoveworks, supper at 6. That's all. No speech, no threats. Just information delivered the way you'd deliver it to hired hands. He turns and walks toward the gate, props it open with a stone, then continues toward the farmhouse without looking back. Liesl watches him go. She watches the unguarded gate. She will remember this moment for 57 years. The unguarded gate. The man who turned his back. The first crack in the wall of propaganda that said surrender to the British meant death. They walk through the gate like ghosts entering a house they're not sure they're welcome in. The barn is weathered oak beams and stone foundation. Ancient. Inside, the smell of hay and old wood and decades of animal warmth baked into the walls. Someone has prepared it, the floor swept clean. Straw mattresses laid out in rows, blankets folded at the foot of each, 2 iron stoves with wood stacked beside them, a pump in the corner for water. It's not comfortable. But it's not cruel either. It's shelter. Function. The bare minimum required to keep 50 human bodies alive and working. Liesl takes the mattress nearest the wall, farthest from the door. In the camps you learned that being against the wall meant you could see everything coming, could brace your back against stone. She sits, and the mattress crackles beneath her 62 pounds. Around her the other women settle, speaking in whispers, too tired for conversation. They simply exist. Breathing in, breathing out, Liesl pulls the blanket around her shoulders. It doesn't help. Yorkshire in September is cold, and 62 pounds means no insulation, just skin stretched over bone with nothing between to keep the cold from reaching marrow. She sits and shivers and thinks about Dresden. She doesn't want to think about Dresden, but the mind doesn't ask permission. February 13th, 1945. 6 months ago, her mother, her 14-year-old sister Greta, their apartment on Pragerstrasse. Mother worked as a seamstress, made wedding dresses before the war parachutes after it started. Liesl was already gone by February, already working as a medical auxiliary with a Luftwaffe field hospital outside Paris, learning that morphine is precious and screaming is cheap. She wasn't there when the bombers came. She received the telegram 3 weeks later. One paragraph. Official. Regret to inform. Firestorm. No remains recovered. Mother and Greta became smoke, became ash, became particles that drifted over the Elbe and ceased being people with names. Father died 2 years earlier. Stalingrad. Frozen to death in a factory basement. The Wehrmacht sent his effects home in a box, a watch that had stopped a wedding ring, a photo of mother that had frozen to his chest. So now she has no one. 19 years old and the last Hartmann standing, 62 pounds of grief wearing skin. She pulls the blanket tighter and waits for supper at 6. 3 in the morning. The coldest part of night. The hour when your body burns whatever reserves it has left, just to keep your core temperature above the threshold where organs start to fail. Liesl is awake, has been awake. Sleep requires surrender, and some part of her refuses to surrender even to rest. She sits with her back against the stone wall, knees pulled to chest, blanket around her shoulders, shivering so hard her teeth chatter. The barn door opens, not violently, just the slow creak of hinges that need oil. A woman enters carrying a lantern. She's older, early 50s, maybe, wearing a housecoat over a nightgown and rubber boots unlaced. Her hair is pinned up, but strands have escaped. This is Constance Whitfield, Edmund's older sister, 52 years old. Widow since 1918, her husband Robert died of Spanish flu 3 months after armistice. She moved back to the family farm and has lived there ever since, helping Edmund, keeping house. She walks down the row of mattresses until she reaches Liesl, stops, looks down. Liesl looks up, too surprised to be afraid, too cold to care. Constance doesn't speak. She sets down the lantern. From under her arm she produces a bundle of dark wool, unfolds it, a sweater, hand-knitted, cable pattern up the front, sized for someone much larger than Liesl. She holds it out. Liesl stares. "Take it," Constance says. Yorkshire accent thick, voice rough from decades of not using it more than necessary. Liesl takes it. The wool is thick, heavy, real. She holds it and feels its weight and realizes it's the first thing anyone has given her in 8 months that wasn't a ration or an order. "Put it on," Constance says. Liesl pulls the sweater over her head. It's enormous. The sleeves hang past her hands, the hem reaches her thighs. But it's warm. God, it's warm. Wool that smells clean. Smells like soap and fresh air, and something that might be lavender. She wraps her arms around herself and feels warmth seep into her chest for the first time since the lorry stopped. Constance watches her for a long moment. Then she picks up the lantern. "Sleep," she says. She turns and walks back toward the door. The lantern light swings with her steps. The door closes. Liesl sits in the oversized sweater and trembles. Not from cold now, from something else, something she doesn't have a name for. She pulls the sleeves down over her hands, buries her face in the wool, breathes in the smell of it, clean and safe and impossibly kind. And for the first time since Dresden burned, since Mother and Greta became smoke for the first time, Liesl Hartmann cries. Not the silent tears she's learned to produce without sound. Real crying, shoulders shaking, breath hitching, the kind of crying that empties you out and leaves you hollow and somehow lighter. She cries until there's nothing left. Then she lies down on the straw mattress, wrapped in a dead boy's sweater, and sleeps. Morning comes early on a working farm. 5:30. The sun not yet up, but the sky greying toward it. Liesl wakes to the sound of knocking. She opens her eyes and sees Constance standing at the barn door, holding 2 large tin containers. "Breakfast," Constance says. She sets the containers on a rough wooden table, someone dragged in while Liesl was asleep. Then she leaves. The women gather, slow at first, uncertain. But hunger is a language everyone speaks fluently. One container holds porridge, oatmeal, thick and pale and steaming. The other holds tea, black, strong enough to strip paint, brewed the way Yorkshire has brewed tea for generations. There are tin cups stacked beside the containers, dented, mismatched. Liesl picks up a cup, looks at it. There, scratched into the metal just below the rim, 4 characters, DW 1940. She turns the cup in her hands. The metal is cold. The letters are crude, carved with something sharp by someone who wanted to mark ownership. D.W. David Whitfield. She doesn't know that yet. Doesn't know that David was Edmund's son. Doesn't know that David scratched his initials into this cup at 20 years old before shipping out to France. Doesn't know that David died 2 days after D-Day. Doesn't know that the army sent the cup home with his effects and that Constance kept it in a drawer for 14 months before deciding that a dead boy doesn't need a cup, but a living girl does. All Liesl knows is that someone used this cup. Someone claimed it. She fills it with tea. The tea is bitter and strong and hot enough to burn her tongue. She drinks it anyway. Feels it go down her throat like liquid heat. Feels it hit her stomach and radiate warmth outward like she's swallowed a coal. Around her, the other women are eating porridge, spooning it into their mouths with focused intensity. 10 minutes later, Constance returns. She carries a tin plate, sets it in front of Liesl without ceremony. On the plate, 2 fried eggs, 3 rashers of back bacon, 1 slice of toast with butter, half a grilled tomato. Liesl stares. She hasn't seen this much food on a single plate in 18 months. She picks up the fork. Her hand shakes. The smell hits first. Salt, smoke, the rich, almost sweet scent of pork fat caramelizing at the edges. The eggs smell faintly of butter, real butter. The toast carries the yeasty warmth of fresh bread. Liesl closes her eyes, breathes it in. Her stomach clenches so hard it hurts. She cuts into the first piece of bacon. The texture. The edge is crispy. British back bacon is different from American, meatier, less fatty, but crisp enough that it snaps. The inside is tender, almost melts. She puts it in her mouth and the sensation is overwhelming. Fat coats her tongue, warm, slick. It spreads across her palate like liquid silk. The meat itself is dense, substantial. She chews slowly, making it last. The salt blooms sharp and then fades. The smoke lingers like an aftertaste of campfires and cured meat and civilization. The taste, salt, dominates. Then fat, rich and coating, and utterly unlike anything she's eaten in a year. Underneath a subtle sweetness, the natural sugars in the meat caramelized by heat. She swallows. feels it go down. Warm, real, substantial. The emotion. For 40 seconds, Liesl Hartmann forgets. Forgets Dresden. Forgets the telegram. Forgets Mother and Greta turned to ash. Forgets the camps and the hunger. For 40 seconds, there is only bacon. Only this. The simple animal pleasure of fat and salt and protein. Then the guilt hits. The guilt. She sees Mother. February 1945. The kitchen in Dresden. Mother smiling that terrible false smile and saying, "I'm not hungry, love, you eat." Mother lied. Mother was always hungry. Mother gave her portions to Liesl and Greta and ate turnip peels. Mother died, weighing 39 kilograms, and now Liesl is eating 3 pieces of bacon. Her throat closes. She sets down the fork. Across the barn, Constance is watching. She walks over, stands beside the bench. "Not hungry?" she asks. Liesl shakes her head, can't speak. Constance is quiet for a moment. "Eat it anyway," she says. "It's not unkind, it's fact." "You're no good to anyone dead," Constance continues. "And you'll be dead in a month if you don't eat. So eat." She walks away. Liesl picks up the fork, lifts another piece of bacon, puts it in her mouth. It tastes like survival, like guilt, like the unbearable weight of being alive when Mother is not. But she eats it anyway. All 3 pieces, both eggs, the toast, the tomato. She eats until the plate is empty and her stomach aches. And when she's done, she carries the plate to the washing station, scrubs it clean, sets it on the rack with care, because someone bothered to cook this. Someone bothered to give her 3 pieces of bacon when they could have given her 1 or none. And that matters. 6 o'clock. The sun is up now. Edmund stands by the barn door. Behind him, a man in corporal's uniform, James Fisher, the interpreter, German-speaking. "Right then," Edmund says. "Mr. Fisher will translate. The rules are simple. Work begins at 6, lunch at noon, supper at 6. Sundays off unless harvest demands otherwise. No leaving the property without escort. Letters home permitted subject to censorship. This is a farm," Fisher translates, "not a punishment. You work, you eat. You don't work, you still eat, but you'll be moved somewhere less comfortable, understood?" 50 heads nod. Edmund looks them over. His eyes pause on Liesl for half a second, taking in the oversized sweater, the skeletal frame inside it, then move on. "Right," he says. "Let's get to it." The work is hard, not cruel, not designed to break them, just hard in the way farm work is hard when there aren't enough hands. Mucking stables, feeding chickens, mending fence posts, scrubbing the dairy shed. Liesl is assigned to the chickens, not because she's incapable of heavier work, because at 62 pounds she'd break trying. Edmund isn't sentimental, but he's practical. She spends the morning scattering grain, collecting eggs. The chickens are fat and glossy and completely unconcerned with the war. There's something calming about chickens. They're stupid and single-minded. They want grain. You give them grain. They produce eggs. You take eggs. The transaction is clean and ancient. By noon, Liesl has collected 43 eggs. She carries them to the farmhouse in a wire basket. Her arms shake from the weight. Constance meets her at the door, takes the basket, counts the eggs without speaking, nods once. Lunch is bread and cheese and milk, plain, sufficient. By 6, when the bell rings for supper, Liesl has walked perhaps 3 miles back and forth. Her legs tremble, her back aches, but she's done the work. She's earned the meal. Supper is served in the barn. Constance ladles stew into tin bowls, mutton, turnips, potatoes, carrots. Liesl takes her bowl and the cup, DW 1940, gleaming dully, and sits. Night falls. The women settle into their mattresses. The stoves are lit. Liesl lies in her straw bed wearing David Whitfield's sweater and thinks about the cup. DW 1940. 5 years ago, some boy carved those letters. Went to war. Died, and now she drinks from it. The propaganda said the British would torture prisoners, would starve them, but the propaganda didn't mention clean cups. Didn't mention thick sweaters given without explanation, didn't mention bacon and the flat Yorkshire voice saying, "You're no good to anyone dead." If the propaganda lied about this, she thinks, what else did it lie about? The question opens like a fault line. She doesn't have answers yet, only questions. She pulls the sweater tighter, closes her eyes, and sleeps. Tomorrow there will be more chickens, more eggs, more work, but tonight there is warmth. There is a full stomach. There is a cup with initials carved by a dead boy. And there is the first small seed of understanding. That mercy is not weakness. That strength can be gentle. She doesn't know it yet, but she will. The cup will teach her. Week 1. September rain turns the Yorkshire fields to mud. Liesl weighs herself on the grain scale in the barn. 64 pounds, 2 pounds gained in 7 days. 2 pounds means her body has stopped eating itself. She's still assigned to chickens. 43 eggs the first day, 46 the second, 48 by the end of the week. Edmund notices. That afternoon he brings her a bucket and a 3-legged stool. 6 cows, he says. Holsteins, need milking twice daily. You know how... She nods. Her father kept 2 cows before the war. Show me, Edmund says. He leads her to the barn. The cows are massive, black and white, udders heavy with milk. Liesl sets the stool beside the first cow, positions the bucket, wraps her thin fingers around the teats. She pulls, nothing. Her grip is too weak. 64 pounds means no muscle. Edmund watches, says nothing. She adjusts her grip, uses her whole hand, pulls with a rhythm she remembers from a farm outside Dresden that doesn't exist anymore. A stream of white hits the bucket, then another. The sound of milk on metal fills the barn. She milks for 20 minutes, her hands cramp, but she finishes the first cow, 2 gallons. Edmund examines the bucket, nods once. Proper job, he says, 2 words, but Liesl hears them like proof that she has value. That night her arms hurt so much she can barely lift the spoon. She eats anyway. Week 3. October arrives cold and clear. Liesl weighs 70 pounds now, 8 pounds in 3 weeks. She started to notice things she couldn't notice when survival took all her attention. Like the way Constance washes the tin cups every night, actually washing them with soap and hot water. It's unnecessary. The women are prisoners, but Constance washes them anyway, every single night, like it matters. Liesl starts helping. She doesn't ask permission, just shows up at the washing station after supper. One evening, Constance hands her the cup with DW 1940 scratched into it. David was my nephew, she says, not looking at Liesl, looking at the cup. Edmund's boy, 20 years old when he died. Normandy, June 8, 1944. Liesl stops scrubbing. Holds the cup like it might break. He carved those letters the night before he shipped out, Constance continues. Wanted to make sure his kit didn't get mixed up. She takes the cup back, dries it. They sent him home in pieces anyway, but they sent the cup back whole. She sets the cup on the rack. You're about his age, she says. Little younger, maybe. Yes, Liesl says. Her English is improving. Did you kill anyone? Constance asks, not accusatory, just curious. No, I was nurse. Medical. Constance nods. David killed people. Had to. That's what soldiers do. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it wrong. Just makes it war. She picks up another cup. War's over now, she says. We've got work to do. That's all. No forgiveness offered because none was requested. Just acknowledgement that the past happened and the present requires clean cups and milked cows. Liesl finishes her washing and thinks about the boy who carved those letters. Who thought his cup mattered? Who died at 20? She thinks I drink from your cup every morning. I wear your sweater every night. I'm alive because your aunt decided not to hate me. How do I live with that? There's no answer. Just more cups to wash. More work to do. Week 7. Mid-November, Liesl weighs 82 pounds. One of the women, Margaret, a signals operator, develops pneumonia. Constance finds her burning with fever. She needs a doctor, Liesl says. You're a nurse, Constance says. You tell me what she needs. Sulfur drugs, rest, warmth. Right then. Constance walks to the farmhouse, returns with Dr. Angus Morrison. He's 66, Edinburgh trained. He examines Margaret with brisk efficiency. A pneumonia, he confirms. She'll need sulfanilamide 3 times daily. He looks at Liesl. You know how to dose sulfur? Yes, I work field hospital. Luftwaffe. He doesn't flinch, just nods. You'll assist then? Over the next 10 days, Liesl tends Margaret like a patient in a proper hospital, changes her bedding, forces fluids, monitors temperature. Dr. Morrison comes daily. On day 10, Margaret is well enough to return to work. Dr. Morrison turns to Liesl. You're wasted on chickens, he says. I need an assistant. Surgery mostly. Village clinic 2 mornings a week. Interested? Liesl stares. I am prisoner. You're a nurse. I don't care what your nationality is. Can you keep someone from bleeding out while I stitch them up? Yes. Right then. Tuesdays and Fridays, don't be late. He leaves. Liesl stands in the barn and realizes something fundamental has shifted. She's not just a body performing labor anymore. She's a professional, someone with skills that matter. That night she writes her first letter home. Dear Aunt Helga, I am in England, Yorkshire. I am not mistreated. I work on a farm. The food is plain but sufficient. The people are cold but not cruel. I am alive, Liesl. December 24th, 1945, Christmas Eve. The invitation comes through Corporal Fisher. Constance asked if any of the women would like to attend midnight service. 14 volunteer. Liesl is one of them. They walk through cold so sharp it feels like breathing glass. Stars like ice chips scattered across black velvet. St. Mary's stands on a hill, stone, ancient. 800 years of prayers soaked into the walls. Inside candles. Hundreds of them. The church is plain, no gilt. Just stone and wood and faith worn smooth. The women slip into the back pews. Reverend Geoffrey Aldridge takes the pulpit. He speaks about peace, about goodwill toward men, about the Christ child born in occupied territory. Then the singing starts. Silent night, holy night. From the back pew, Liesl opens her mouth. The words come out in German. Stille Nacht. Heilige Nacht. The woman beside her joins, then another. 14 German voices blending with the English. An old man in the 3rd row turns around. Herbert Blackwood, 82 years old, lost 2 sons in the First War, 1 grandson in the Second. He looks at Liesl, and he smiles. Not a big smile, just a small acknowledgement. He turns back, continues singing in English. The service concludes. The congregation files into the parish hall. Tea and mince pies. Mrs. Aldridge gestures toward the table. Come on then, she says to the German women. Don't stand there like lost sheep. Liesl stands with her cup, not David's cup, a proper china cup and her mince pie, and realizes she's surrounded by people who have every reason to hate her. But no one is hating. They're just existing. Together. It's not forgiveness. It's something simpler. It's acknowledgement that you're here, that I'm here, that we're both trying to survive the same winter. She bites into the mince pie. The pastry flakes, the filling is sweet and warming, and she thinks about the propaganda again, about how it prepared her For cruelty, but not for this. For midnight mass in an ancient church. For mince pies shared without condition. For an old man who lost everything smiling when she sang in German. The propaganda lied. And if it lied about this, what else? The question opens like a door. She doesn't have answers yet, but she has the question, and questions are where change begins. March 1946. The picture post arrives on a Thursday. Constance carries it to the barn. Liesl is mucking stalls, 91 pounds now, strong enough for heavy work. Constance holds out the magazine. This came today, she says. Liesl takes it. She sees Dresden first, her city, gone, not damaged, gone, erased. The photograph shows the Frauenkirche, the Church of Our Lady, or what's left of it. The dome collapsed, the walls barely standing. Her apartment was 3 blocks from there. She reads the caption, 25,000 civilian dead. Mother and Greta are in that number, 2 out of 25,000. Her hands shake. I'm sorry, Constance says. About your people. Liesl looks up. Her eyes are dry. She's cried too much already. They deserve to die, she asks. 25,000, they deserve... Constance is quiet for a long moment. No, she finally says. But David didn't deserve to die either, Constance continues. Normandy, June 8, 1944, 20 years old. Stepped on a mine. They sent him home in pieces. She gestures at the magazine. War doesn't care about deserving. It just takes. Your mother, my nephew. 25,000 in Dresden. Millions it takes and takes. Liesl looks back at the photograph. Then why, she asks. Why you give me sweater? Why not hate? Constance considers this carefully. Because if I hated you, she says slowly, if I punished you for what happened to David, then David died for nothing. Liesl doesn't understand. Constance tries again. David went to France to fight Nazis, not Germans, the ones running the camps, the ones invading countries. She points at Liesl. You're not a Nazi. You're a girl who got caught up in something bigger than you, same as David. She picks up the magazine, closes it. If I let hate win, she says, if I treated you cruel because your people killed my people, then I become the thing David died fighting against. His death means nothing. She hands the magazine back. So I gave you the sweater, and I wash your cup, because that's the only way any of this means anything. She turns to leave. Your mother didn't deserve to die, she says, without turning around. Neither did David, but they're dead anyway, and we're not. So we get up, we do the work, we try to make sure their deaths brought something other than more death. She leaves. Liesl stands alone, holding a magazine that proves her entire world is gone. Instead of collapsing, she thinks about the tin cup. DW 1940. David Whitfield, dead in France. She drinks from his cup every morning, wears his sweater every night, lives in his country because his aunt decided mercy was stronger than hate. Constance chose differently, chose to wash cups instead of withhold them, chose to make David's death mean something by refusing to perpetuate the cycle. Liesl sets down the magazine, picks up the pitchfork, returns to work. 'Cause that's what you do. June 1946. The repatriation notices begin arriving. Most of the 50 women accept immediately. They have families. Germany is rubble, but it's their rubble. 14 refuse. Liesl is one of them. She has no family. Dresden is ash. Aunt Helga wrote back once, if you are safe in England, stay there. There is nothing to come home to. She approaches Constance one evening. I want to stay, Liesl says. Stay as what we, worker, pay wage, not prisoner. Constance considers. I'll talk to Edmund. The next morning, Edmund makes the offer. £2 a week, he says. Room and board included. Interested? Yes. Right then. The POW tag goes into a drawer. Liesl becomes a civilian, an employee. She uses her first wages to buy a second-hand bicycle, rides it to the village clinic every Tuesday and Friday. The village stops staring. She becomes familiar, expected, the German nurse who saved Dorothy Henshaw's granddaughter. Not forgiven exactly, but accepted. It's enough. 1950. 4 years pass like water. Liesl weighs 108 pounds. Healthy, strong. She meets William Beckett at a barn dance. He's 28. RAF mechanic. Quiet, competent. They marry 6 months later. St. Mary's Church. Constance and Edmund in attendance. Dr. Morrison gives her away. The village attends. Not everyone, but enough. Dorothy Henshaw brings a cake, Grace Sykes brings flowers, and Constance gives Liesl a wedding gift. Inside the sweater, David's sweater. He'd want you to have it, Constance says. Properly, it's yours. Liesl holds the sweater and cries at her own wedding. Thank you, she manages. The reception is held in the parish hall. Liesl stands beside William and thinks about the propaganda that told her the British would kill her. But they gave her a wedding instead. 1953, 1954. Children, a daughter first, Constance Dorothy, then a son, David Edmund. Motherhood is terrifying, but Constance teaches her. You'll do fine, Constance says. You survived worse than a crying baby. And she does. The children grow, learn to walk, learn to talk. November 1958. Edmund dies peacefully, in his sleep. Heart failure. The funeral is large. Half the village attends. Liesl stands at the graveside and thinks about the first time she saw Edmund, standing by the gate. You'll be billeted in the barn, he'd said. Supper at 6. No cruelty, no kindness, just fact. That was Edmund. They lower him into Yorkshire soil. That night she drinks her tea from DW 1940 and remembers 1989. Constance dies at 95, quietly, in the farmhouse where she was born. They find the letter in her nightstand, addressed to Liesl, dated 1946. Liesl, if you're reading this, I am gone. I want you to know something about the sweater and the cup. They were David's. I kept them in a drawer for 14 months. Couldn't bear to look at them. Then you arrived, 62 pounds, shivering. I gave you the sweater because David was dead and didn't need it. And you were alive and did. That's all. No grand gesture, just practicality. But somewhere in those weeks I realized something. If I hated you, if I punished you for what happened to David, I would become exactly what David died fighting. Small, mean, cruel. So I chose to be like him instead of like my grief. You lived, you healed. You became a nurse, a wife, a mother. David would have liked that. Keep the cup. Remember that mercy is stronger than hate. That's the only way any of this means anything. Constance Liesl reads it 3 times. Then she folds it carefully, sets it beside the tin cup on the kitchen shelf, and she cries for Constance, for David, for Mother and Greta, for the girl who weighed 62 pounds and thought she would die, for the woman who gave her a sweater and a cup and a chance, for mercy delivered without fanfare while the world burned. She cries until there's nothing left. Then she makes tea, pours it into DW 1940, drinks, and thinks, thank you. March 2001. Liesl is 75. Lung cancer. Stage 4. She makes arrangements. The farm goes to her children, but the cup goes to Yorkshire Museum. She wraps it carefully, includes the photograph from 1945, includes Constance's letter, includes her own letter explaining everything. The curator accepts the donation. This will be preserved, he promises. Your story will be told. Liesl nods. Good. March 2002. Liesl dies on a Tuesday. peacefully, at home, surrounded by children and grandchildren. She's buried in St. Mary's churchyard, next to William, not far from Edmund and Constance. The headstone is simple: Liesl Hartman Beckett, 1926. 2002, she weighed 62 pounds when Mercy found her. The tin cup remains in Yorkshire Museum, on display behind glass. DWW, 1940, still visible despite 70 years of use. Visitors pause, read the placard, study the photograph. They ask, "Is this real?" And the guide says, "Yes, every word." They ask, "What happened to her?" And the guide tells them, "She lived, married, had children, became a nurse, saved hundreds of lives, died at 76 surrounded by family." They ask, "Because of the cup?" And the guide says, "Because someone chose mercy when hate would have been easier, when vengeance would have been justified. Someone chose differently." The visitors nod, some walk away, some stay, looking at the cup, at the initials carved by a boy who died young, at the photograph of a girl who lived long, at the evidence that restraint is strength, that mercy breaks cycles, that the truest victory is not in crushing your enemy, but in refusing to become what you fought against. The cup sits in its case, silent, waiting, ready to tell its story to anyone willing to listen. The story of how 62 pounds became 76 years, how a tin cup became a legacy, how mercy delivered without fanfare in a barn in Yorkshire multiplied across generations. The story isn't finished. It never is. Because every time someone reads the placard and thinks, "Maybe I can choose differently too," the story continues. Every time hatred loses to kindness, the story continues. Every time someone washes a cup they could have left dirty, the story continues. DW 1940, David Whitfield, 20 years old, dead in France. But his cup lives on, and the girl who drank from it lives on, and the mercy that connected them lives on, and that more than any medal or monument or military victory is what defeats the darkness, not force, not vengeance, but this, a clean cup, a warm sweater, the stubborn insistence that human beings, even enemies, deserve to be treated like human beings. That is strength, that is victory, that is the lesson of the tin cup, and the lesson endures.